And it's not always, chasing the cheap, it's chasing the quality of life. I probably spend very similar to what I would in the United States, but my quality of life is just so much more rich here.
Welcome to the Retirement in Mexico podcast, your guide to a life of sun, sand, and possibility. If you've ever dreamed of spending your golden years under the warm Mexican sun, surrounded by breathtaking beaches, rich culture, and an exciting community, you're in the right place. We're here to guide you every step of the way with expert insights, inspiring stories, and everything you need to know to make your move with confidence. The best chapter of your life is yours to create. Let's do this. Hey, Brett, thank you so much for joining our podcast today.
Hi, Daniel. I'm glad to join you. Happy to have this conversation.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I was quite surprised when I saw you on Facebook that you are living in Querétaro and selling insurance. But before we get there, you and I met 9 years ago when you bought a pre-construction condo from a building that I represented.
That is correct. Yeah. We moved down to Mexico, and it's now been about 10 years ago that we moved to Mexico, but we rented, for a year prior to doing the real estate shopping. And after we got our feet wet, for a year, we're like, we love Mexico. We love the community. So we went to that next step, and that was shopping for a permanent home. And that's when we met at the Peña de Guadalupe.
Yeah. I remember that building quite well. So question for you. How was it purchasing a pre-construction in Mexico? Was that your first purchase in Mexico?
Yeah, it was our first real estate transaction in Mexico, and it was pre-construction. Fortunately, this was more of a boutique building. I believe there was only 6 units at the time in the building, and the shell was already built. So we felt very good and comfortable moving forward. It was private developers who also were going to live in the penthouse of the building. So we didn't, have any of those where the developer could take off or leave us abandoned or anything like that. We felt very comfortable that the actual developer was going to use this as one of their homes as well. So the transaction actually went very, very smooth with us. And being that we came in pre-construction, we were able to make a few modifications, not to the shell per se, but to the finishings that were going to be in the actual unit. So that was a great opportunity as well.
Yeah. And plus you guys got one of the 2 units that had an actual backyard.
Yeah. And we were fortunate enough to have a courtyard, which is kind of unheard of. So we had a really nice private courtyard that we renovated like 2 times after we moved in. But, you learn, you live, and it was a great, great building for us. I think we were in there for a total of almost like 7-8 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Uh-huh.
So what was it like living in Vallarta? Where in the States did you guys move from?
We moved from Denver, Colorado. So very, very different climate than we were used to. We were used to being at a mile high in the Mile High City in Denver. And now we're at, ocean level, no altitude whatsoever. So the oxygen was much better, and it's just the biggest difference for us was getting used to the climate. Rainy season is a beast. So the heat, you really, really feel that coming in around right now, August, September.
Yeah. Well, I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah. So it was just getting used to the heat and the climate. But Vallarta is just a very unique place. It has a sense of community due to the number one, the large expat community that's there. And then also the nationals, which, have for their majority of their lives serviced like a tourism industry. So they're used to dealing with expats for their living. So, the community feeling that you have there is just very strong bonds.
Did you guys visit other places in Mexico before settling in Puerto Vallarta?
Our only experiences with Mexico was just the typical all-inclusive vacations, to where you're basically a prisoner of the resort. But the reason we found Vallarta is my wife, Brooke, she came down to Vallarta with one of her friends who was a U.S. citizen, but also a Mexican citizen as well. So knew Spanish, knew Vallarta. Actually, some of his family had been born and raised in Vallarta. So he took her outside of that resort prison and showed her what Vallarta was all about. And she fell in love and came back and told me and says, we need to go down to Vallarta and just spend some time. And of course, I fell in love with it as well. And next thing we know, we're selling our home in Denver, Colorado, and we're moving to Mexico. Fortunately, I worked online, so it didn't really affect my business. But I was in that phase anyhow to where I was going to be possibly selling my business to transition into something else. So it just worked out beautifully for us.
Okay, so you guys came down and you rented for a while. So how long did you rent for until you actually made the purchase?
Well, we first rented an Airbnb in Cinco de Diciembre for 3 months so we could find a long-term rental because we wanted to kind of scope out the city before we signed a long-term lease. So we just did a short-term 3-month rental in an Airbnb, and then we found a 1-year rental. We used to live in the Icon in the hotel zone. We thought we found our life forever there. We're like, oh my God, we're basically like living in a resort. But after a year, there's a lot of churn in those towers over there at the Icon. And, you're dealing with mostly a lot of people that are there on vacation and holidaying, a mix of nationals and expats. But we wanted to get more ingrained in the community. And so that's when we started searching for real estate after a year living there.
So you guys found the place, pre-construction. So you moved in. You lived there for what? You said 6 years, 7 years?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but it was definitely over 6 years.
All right. So during those 6 years, what was your life like? So what did you guys wind up doing that you weren't doing back in Denver? What were some of the best moments? What did you love about Vallarta?
Well, at first, I told you that I was working in Colorado and I did that same job when I came here. But soon after, I sold my company. So we kind of lived that retirement lifestyle for a while, which involved going out on the bay, a lot of boat invites. I golfed at the time, so I was golfing with friends, a lot of beach time. We immersed ourselves in Spanish school at the Spanish Experience Center, did like a month-long immersion course there. But, after living that retirement kind of lifestyle, I'm like, I'm way too young for this. I had to reinvent myself. And that's when I put a resume together and I started this journey of becoming a health insurance broker for Expats.
Okay. So did you start that business when you're still in PV or after you sold and you moved to Querétaro?
No, it was while I was in PV. That's when I started the business there. So I went up to the United States and I got my insurance license, which I had to study many, many hours for, but I became licensed. And then I worked in Vallarta as a full-time broker for about 4 years. I was in Vallarta doing it before I moved to Querétaro, and I'm still doing that now.
So tell me about Querétaro, and I'm going to jump into the insurance because that's really important.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients are of a certain age, and insurance is very important to their healthcare. What was it like selling your condo? So it's interesting because you guys came down as renters, then you're a buyer, and then you're a seller. So what was it like selling a property in Mexico?
Well, it was a hard decision to make because, as I had said, we lived in a boutique building with just 6 other units, and we became very close with all of our neighbors. They're actually still our friends till this day. But we were the first ones to make the leap and sell. The market was ripe. It was very prime, peak market. There was a time to where people were getting multiple offers on properties, and I never in a million years thought I was going to make money off real estate in Mexico. But, we obviously bought at the right time. We sold at the right time, and we weren't on the market, but maybe about 3 months before we had a few offers and finally accepted one. And we actually used the same realtor buying the home as we did selling the home. So everything was very, very seamless.
And then, so you took that money and now you moved to Querétaro. And are you renting there? Did you buy a house? What did you guys do?
Well, we had, after being in Vallarta for almost 8 years at that point, we had thought sometime in our future, we're probably going to want to move more inland. First of all, when you move inland, you can own the land, the dirt that you have. You don't have to have it in a trust to where you have an additional fee. And we also wanted to move to a more temperate climate. So we had been holidaying to Querétaro, San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato, those areas that are more in the mountainous regions to where the climate is just absolutely gorgeous year round. And we ended up buying land that we sat on for about a year and a half, 2 years before we sold the property in Vallarta. So when we sold the home, we came to Querétaro and rented a property for a year because we knew it was at least going to take a year to develop that land and build our home. So we hired an architect, we hired an interior designer architect. They both collaborated together and we were able to build our dream home here with the proceeds that we got from the sale and the profit that we made from the sale in Vallarta, with a little bit more onto it. But we now have our dream home that we built in Querétaro.
Wow, that's awesome. Are you going to invite me over one day?
Of course, we got a great community that sits 102 degrees all year round.
Well, you mentioned places like San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato. Those are all beautiful places. And I've been to Querétaro once. It was in 2018, and the weather was just perfect. The city was so clean. There are so many wonderful restaurants. So it's a great city.
Yeah. More and more I'm seeing. I mean, when we first started looking here, there was barely any gringos at all. But more and more and more, you're seeing a lot more of younger families actually moving out here. The industry in Querétaro is just growing so much. So I'm really looking forward to see how much more the city grows.
Yeah, because, it wasn't really on the radar for expats to move to Querétaro, I would say about 10 years ago. But in the last 3 to 5 years, more and more Americans are discovering Querétaro and are moving there.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Every one of these communities in Mexico has Facebook groups. You can just tell by how large those Facebook groups are growing to how attractive a city is becoming to those people looking to move or who have moved here. Querétaro is a very big city, I think like 2.2 million people. So, to really see it from your own eyes, you have to be out and about on a daily basis, to where I'm working from a home office and all that. So I don't see it with my eyes because there's just so many people here. Whereas in Vallarta, you're ingrained in the community and it's much smaller, so you see it. But absolutely, there's more and more people moving here every single month. Speaking with the facilitators that are processing the visas, but like I said, I feel it's a much more younger demographic that's coming here as of late than how it was when I first moved to Mexico. So when it was more of the, retiree type people.
I mean, you mean younger demographic of foreigners like Americans and Canadians. Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I believe, just the more that we keep growing into this digital age, a lot more employers are allowing people to work remotely. I believe the pandemic was definitely the kickoff to that. And it's just very, very difficult after so many people are working from home offices to go back to that corporate structure. So they're, finding jobs that will allow them the flexibility to work remotely. And it's not always, chasing the cheap. It's chasing the quality of life. I probably spend very similar to what I would in the United States, but my quality of life is just so much more rich here.
Yeah. And you live in Vallarta, and same thing over here. We have a lot of digital nomads right now. And like you pointed out, when you retired in Vallarta, I mean, it sounded like your social calendar just blew up. You're on the boat, you're golfing, you're outdoors all the time. And that's one of the beautiful things about places like PV and other parts of Mexico is your quality of life is completely different. I feel like you're not really caught up in the rat race like we were. Like I'm from Los Angeles, and, you wake up and it's just constant stress between the traffic.
Yeah.
The cost of living and everything else you have to go through.
Yeah, of course. I still miss being here in Querétaro. It's not the same at all as Vallarta with the community and all that. So fortunately, it's only a 55-minute flight, and the flights are very, very inexpensive on the Mexican carriers such as like Barajas. So we go back to Vallarta often just to catch up with the community, catch up with our friends, catch up with my business relationships. So we're very fortunate in what we have.
Yeah. Okay, so business. So let's talk about insurance. Healthcare is a very important theme for a lot of our Americans and Canadians, baby boomers. We primarily deal with baby boomers moving here, but now I'm seeing a lot of Gen X, my generation, in the 50s and up, because now they're thinking about retirement in a few years, investing, and financially they're in a better place. So they're buying an investment property in Mexico, renting it out. But they worry, they're all aging, and they worry about healthcare and getting insurance.
Yeah.
So that's something you specialize in. What kind of insurance do you specialize in, Brett?
Mainly, I specialize in health insurance, but I also do life insurance as well. Life insurance is a little bit difficult for retirees just because you don't usually get life insurance in your 60s. It's usually attained at a younger age to where you can lock in at a better price. But primarily, health insurance is what people are looking for.
And so a retiree moves down here. Let's just say they're 65 years old, and Medicare does not cover in Mexico, correct?
Yeah, so with Medicare, you have Part A and Part B. Those don't work abroad. Some people do have advantage policies or supplements, but they're very restricted if you're establishing residency abroad or if you're living outside of the United States for more than 6 months of the year. Your best interest is to look into private health insurance, international or national private health insurance.
So someone approaches you and says, hey, Brett, I'm 65 years old. I don't have insurance in Mexico. Can you help me out? So where do they start?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest initial question, which is unfortunate because when you get outside of, let's say, Canada to where it's a public healthcare system, or the United States to where it's now governed by the Affordable Health Care Act, we're now dealing with pre-existing conditions when looking at health insurance when you're moving abroad, which really doesn't factor into the case in Canada, nor does it factor into the case into the United States anymore. But it is one of the biggest factors of international or national insurance. So we first have to make sure that you're eligible to apply. And that would be one of my first questions is, what's your health history, your pre-existing conditions, any medications that you're on, any surgeries that you've had. So we can talk about your insurability first to make sure that you're eligible or if any conditions will be excluded.
What are some of the big misconceptions people have about insurance when moving to Mexico?
Well, I think a misconception is they think that Mexico's cheap, so the insurance should be too, or that healthcare is cheap just because it's Mexico. And yes, that might be the case if you're having minor situations, like going to see a specialist, going to see a general practitioner. Some people go to the Doc in the Box next to the pharmacy. Yeah, those are going to be affordable situations for you. But when you're talking about chronic illnesses, cancers, heart attacks, strokes, surgeries, ICU, inpatient admissions, it's very, very costly here in Mexico. More affordable than the United States, but still a big expense. So the insurance, while it may be affordable, much more affordable than the United States, it's still going to be one of your bigger expenses that you're going to incur when you move abroad.
Sure. And it goes up every year, just like in the States.
Yeah, that one of my biggest things when I said a renewal is I didn't have any claims. Why is my insurance premiums going up? Well, my auto insurance goes up every year and I didn't have an accident. Or, my homeowner's insurance goes up every year and I didn't make a homeowner's claim. It's just things go up with inflation and insurance does too. And as you age, your risk goes up with your age as well.
Yeah. Well, my health insurance, I've had health insurance here for, I think, 13, 14 years. I mean, it's doubled from 13, 14 years ago. So, look, the cost of living globally goes up. That's just the way it is. Things in life in LA were cheaper 20 years ago. Same thing in Mexico.
Yeah.
Over the world. So, you can't just live in the past and say, well, it used to be so much cheaper back then. Life was cheaper back then.
Yeah.
I think my first car was $7,000, back in the 90s. Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Anyway. So you just have to kind of factor that in. And I agree with you. If you're going to compare it to the United States and Canada, a lot of things are still a lot more affordable here. It's all relative, in my opinion. And I find that, like you said, if I just have to go walk in the hospital, like an emergency, it's not as expensive as it is in the States. So there are some costs that are considerably less, but there are others, like you said, people think everything's dirt cheap. That's just not the way it is. I think it's a big misconception.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So how does the Mexican insurance system, would you say, differs from the American system?
Are you talking in regards to the public or the private?
To the private.
To the private. So with the private hospitals in Mexico, they're going to work much differently than you're used to probably back in Canada or the United States. First of all, they're private companies, so they're not governed or regulated by a government body that's telling them you need to accept these insurances or you need to do these rules or whatsoever. They kind of have their own guidelines and each hospital is a little bit different. One of the biggest things that I feel is different is in the United States or Canada, and you're a citizen of those countries, if you default on a medical bill, they have recourse to collect that through, a lien on a property or, garnishment of wages or taking it to court or something like that. That really doesn't exist here in Mexico. So having the ability to pay your bill when you're at the hospital is a big deal. Like, you cannot be discharged until you've settled your bill. So whether that be through self-pay or through insurance, know that you're leaving that hospital with that bill satisfied. So you can't just have them be like, okay, send me the bill in the mail and I'll make payments. So that's not going to happen here. And another thing is when people check into a hospital, whether if they have insurance or not, they're still going to have a credit card to put down as like a hold until you can get the guarantee of payment from your insurance company, or you can pay the bill by a bank transfer or the rest on your credit card. So that's just something else that's very different from the United States and Canada. But when it comes to care, it's just a different level. The care and the treatments, personally, when I've been in a hospital in Mexico, is tenfold to what I've had in the United States. The doctors, the bedside manner, you have a relationship with your doctor. They give you the WhatsApp to personally communicate with them after you have left, to where in the United States, it's like I'm dealing with a nurse practitioner more than the doctor. The doctor's just coming in to review what the nurse did. So the care here is just like so much better. So from my personal experience, it's just a better situation overall.
Brett, I am with you 100%. A few times when I was not in the hospital, one was dehydration. One time I had dengue. Even visiting my general practitioner, they give me their private phone number, their private email. That doesn't happen in the States that I'm aware of. And I feel like they're not treating me like cattle, like going through the ranch, like next, you only have 5, like in the States, you have like 5 or 10 minutes to get in and out.
Yeah.
And over here, they really take their time to sit down and go over everything with you and treat you like a human being. I'm not trying to bash the United States by far. I'm just sharing with you my experience of what I've gone through back in LA versus here when I've been in the hospital. So the level of care, I feel like is a lot different here. And also, you're so right about making the payment. I do have health insurance here in Mexico, but I still had to pay the bill with my credit card before I left. And then I had to just file the claim with my insurance company, and then I got the refund back really quick.
Yeah.
They sent me an email. They said, take this to such and such bank and they'll give you the cash.
Yeah, it's a little bit different depending on the admission, like if it's going to be directly billed to the insurance company, because, of course, a lot of people cannot upfront that bill and wait to be reimbursed. So we try to arrange for direct billing as much as possible. But the only way that the direct billing can take place is if you're admitted for over 24 hours or if you have a pre-approved medical procedure that's going to exceed that.
Your retirement in Mexico starts right here, and we're excited to be part of your journey. Every episode, we bring you the magic of Mexico, insider tips, and expert advice to help you take that next big step with confidence. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others like you discover the endless possibilities waiting south of the border. Got a topic you'd like for us to cover? We'd love to hear from you. Send your suggestions to info@tanielchemsin.com. And remember, a life well lived isn't left to chance. It's created with intention. See you next time.